I've worked at Sky News for 12 years and I'm the OSINT desk editor. And with me?
Hi, I'm Sanya Burgess. I'm a digital investigations journalist on the Sky News Data and Forensics team, which has only existed for about 2 years.
So my job, I run the OSINT desk. You might be wondering what it means. OSINT stands for Open Source Intelligence, which is the collection and analysis of content and data from open sources. This might be from social media, might be from other places online. We find, verify, and share pictures and videos for all platforms on Sky News. Later on, I'm going to talk about some geolocation examples, an investigation that I worked on, and we're going to leave you with a challenge.
So the digital investigations team is pretty unusual compared to other specialist units, both on Fleet Street and in broadcast. We were essentially put together to deal with the evolving nature of news. That's everything from how it spreads to how we report it and even how we research it. So we have quite a lot of overlap with what Adam and his desk do. We also use digital tools such as the Internet Archive, which is basically a website that records snapshots of websites across the internet so we can check any changes. We also use social media, for example, to help us build up a picture of people and understand their networks. We do short and long form pieces that have won awards and racked up millions of views on YouTube, broadcast on Sky TV, and we have written articles on the website. During today's presentation, there may be some graphic images, so this is your chance, if you don't want to see that, to leave the room, leave the live stream, or prepare to cover your eyes.
We've put together a short video to show you some of our team's work from the last couple of years.
Which will have a graphic image in it.
This is the story of a massacre in Myanmar. Of at least 37 people brutally killed on Christmas Eve.
It's a busy street in broad daylight, and secret police are trying to force a woman into their car. Amid the chaos, one of them reaches into a pocket and pulls a gun. An onlooker attempts to intervene before being chased away at gunpoint.
The police, who are parked up the road, arrive 20 seconds after it turns violent. Another one of the staff wearing riot gear is pulled from the consulate gate and kicked at least 3 times in the head by the protesters. One of the most senior Chinese diplomats in the UK, the Consul General, is now inside the consulate.
It appears to show her having coffee at a Dubai mall. There are face masks on the table suggesting it has been taken recently. And an advert in the background is promoting a movie released on the 13th of May.
The following day, its onboard tracker is switched off. Its last recorded position is here, in the Black Sea. But the same ship is located in satellite imagery stopping in Sevastopol port in Crimea, the peninsula that Russia invaded and annexed back in 2014. Satellite imagery from the same day shows it next to silos being loaded with what analysts say is grain.
New analysis by the Sky News data team shows that the number of homeless households in England relocated outside their home region has almost doubled over the last 3 years. We found that the steepest rise was in the East Midlands. In 2019, approximately only 1 in 100 placements were outside the region. Today, that number is closer to 1 in 10.
Legitimate ticket holders are caught up in the crush as the stewards are overwhelmed, along with at least 6 police officers that we have counted in this and other videos of the scene.
But protesters are adapting, as Sky News analysis has found, by posting shorter clips and deliberately blurring identities. A high-stakes game of cat and mouse with the authorities.
So, as you can see from that reel, we cover a wide range of topics. And along that slide, please. This is a graphic image. We've helped to uncover war crimes in Myanmar. We've shown the proliferation of files needed to 3D print guns that are turning up on the streets of Britain. And we've used satellite imagery to help show the scale of the floods in Pakistan this summer. Now, we don't have a crystal ball that will tell you the future of news, but we can already see there are rapid changes, both good and bad. For example, citizen journalists 10 years ago used to be just a buzzword and you counted yourself lucky if you came across one. Now, they're part of the bread and butter of breaking news reporting. Citizen journalists are when it's a normal person who finds themselves caught up in a news event. That could be a terror attack, an extreme weather event, or something like a stampede at a concert. Those people then upload text, images, or video onto social media. We can get in touch with them, verify what they have, and then use that as part of our reporting, which is brilliant. Apart from, there are some people who like to try and get internet points, likes, followers by posting fake information and pretending they are there, which is why verification is so important and will be something we'll talk about shortly. Another aspect is that there is now so much information online, which is great because generally that means when we go looking for it, we can find it. But there is so much information online. The haystack when we're looking for that needle is enormous, and the amount of noise we have to try and work through can be intimidating. Thirdly, digital tools have become more sophisticated, and we actually have a special guest for you now who is going to help exemplify what we're talking about. Welcome, Keanu Reeves.
Give me some. See me up in the club with 11 girls, posted in the back, diamond things in my grill, Brooklyn brim with my eyes sitting low.
If you couldn't tell, that's not actually Keanu Reeves doing that. I encourage you all to go and check out the rest of the TikTok because it only gets weirder. That was in fact a deepfake, which is a use of AI basically to create something which you can then put onto a video to make it seem like that is the real person talking. It's very funny when you're seeing celebrities put in stupid situations, but we're actually starting to see it impact the news agenda. For example, earlier this year,
Любі українці, шановні захисники, бути президентом.
We saw a deepfake of President Zelensky go viral on Twitter. You can see this one isn't as sophisticated as Keanu. His head is way too big for his body. But if you're scrolling quickly, you might not notice that. And what he's saying in the video is, Ukraine, we're surrendering, put down our arms. No one took responsibility for this, but the agenda behind it is clear. So how do we tackle this, both the good and the bad? We're going to talk to you today about transparency, verification, satellite images, being in the right online spaces at the right times, and how that all fits in with traditional media reporting. So first up, transparency. This is incredibly important to us because it helps build trust with our readers and viewers. That's why, as you may have noticed during the sizzle reel, we take time to slow down videos. When we're researching, we're rewinding and watching this stuff over and over again. I appreciate people at home don't have the time or energy to do that. So we know we've got one chance to explain what we're trying to explain, which is why we slow it down so people can make their minds up for themselves. It's the same reason you'll see boxes on our work, helping people know where to concentrate in order to understand the story. Another area is verification.
And I'm going to talk about that. Verification is at the heart of a lot of our work. Something will be posted or shared with us, and we find ways to independently confirm that something is what it claims to be. This could be looking at the profile that posted it. It could be the quality of the content and whether that matches up with what that person posts. It could be geolocating it to a specific place, which is when we use mapping tools like Google Earth. Finding a match can be time-consuming and sometimes quite complex. In this example, this video started being shared online on the 25th of February, the second day of Russia's attempt to invade Ukraine. It shows a military vehicle running over a pedestrian's car. It was shared originally on Telegram and copied onto Twitter. A translation on the original Telegram mentioned an area, the Obolonsky district. This is an area about 42 square miles big, but luckily for us, a large majority of it is rural. When we start trying to locate something, as Sanya mentioned, we look at it again and again and again. We freeze it and we look for things that might help us locate it. For me, on the left of our screen here are three of the key things that helped me. Firstly, we've got a large roundabout. Right next to it, we've got a triangular junction and what looks like a tram line going through it. So using Google Maps satellites, I did a search for tram stations. And there we can see in red all of the tram stations in the area. From there, it was relatively simple, following the tram line, looking for our matches. Eventually, I got it. And here is the matching location on the satellite. We've got our large roundabout. We can see the slight cream area here. We can see the triangular roundabout, triangular junction, and then the tram line going through. We can see also actually that the shapes look slightly different on satellites, and this is one of the challenges that we have. They're similar, but they're slightly different. This example took me around 15 minutes, but some take a lot longer, especially when we're dealing with old satellite images and changes in buildings and landscapes.
Another tool that we use is reverse search, and that is basically when you Google something, but instead of using text, you use an image. You don't just have to use Google, there's a whole bunch of other suppliers, and the technology is getting more advanced by the day. We're going to show you an example, but warning, it is a graphic image. So this unfortunately shows 4 children who died in the floods, and it was going viral during the Pakistan floods this summer. You can see why. It immediately pulls on your heartstrings and makes you pay attention. However, when we reverse search the image, we actually found that it was circulating at least in 2019, if not before. That meant we knew not to include it in our coverage of the floods, no matter how compelling the image was. Next slide, please. Another tool we use is satellite imagery, and this is a great independent source for us. We have trusted platforms that we're able to use and search for ourselves, but we've also developed commercial partnerships with other companies who have really powerful satellites. For example, this Maxar image shows Kerch Bridge, which connects Russia to Crimea, and the level of detail we can see in it after this explosion, you can see scorch marks, you can see where barriers have bent from the explosion, you can see vehicles, fire, all sorts of things, immediately giving us access to incredible amounts of information. Now, moving on to being in the right spaces at the right time, this can mean a number of things, but for now, let's just talk about it in terms of social media. Our team is constantly monitoring every social media platform, blogs, forums, special websites. Going through that would be a whole nother talk, so let's just focus on Telegram. That is an encrypted messaging app that basically, although it's not particularly new, has become and risen to prominence as the main stalwart for groups who want to organize online, in theory, away from prying eyes. We can find all kinds of bits of information and communities there, such as information about the Russian military, the Ukrainian military, the far right, the far left, to drug dealers and conspiracy theorists. And what we do by getting into those spaces, it means that we're getting a front row seat to what they're trying to disseminate. And it means that we can be, almost as it happens that these images and videos are being shared with their community, we're there and we can start acting on it straight away. Now, all of this doesn't happen in isolation. We combine it with traditional reporting skills. And for me, there's one big story that it really came into its own for. I reported on the missing Dubai princess. She's called Princess Latifa, and her father is the ruler of Dubai. I was smuggling secret messages to her, and she responded with videos in which she claimed her father was keeping her hostage, something her father denies to this day. It was a very difficult subject to get sources to talk to me on, so I had to rely on OSINT as much as possible to try and confirm details where I could. And it didn't end there. For example, in February this year, slide please, this image was tweeted showing the UN Human Rights Chief, Michelle Bachelet, with Latifa out in public. It's a clear message. She's free, she's meeting with the most important person in the world, arguably, on human rights. Don't worry. But as Adam and I have already spoken about, we're obsessed with detail. So I started scouring the back of the image, and I noticed, hey, what are these strange lights or something in the background? So what I did, I looked at the landmarks, I found words, and I was able to find it on Google, another example of geolocation. There, I looked up user-uploaded images and was able to see, well, in February, those weird glowing things aren't there. I looked back, and in November and December, they were. They're Christmas lights. famously not put up in February. So when I confronted the UN, they admitted the image posted in February had actually been taken in November. So a final thought before I hand over to Adam for the demo. Essentially, digital investigations journalists are in a race. As our tools and techniques are improving, misinformation and bad actors are also evolving. So we all have to keep growing and combining these skills with old skills to continue to uncover the truth. Now over to Adam for your demo.
So you've heard the broad picture of some of our work. Here's a little bit more detail about a story that I worked on. You may remember it in the channel, 27 people died. Here's a little intro about what the story's about.
On the 24th of November, 27 people died when their boat capsized in the English Channel. It was the biggest loss of life in those waters in recent history. Just 2 people survived. Those survivors said they waited for help for hours in the dark and claimed Britain and France both disagreed whose waters the struggling boat was in.
دواتر پلیسی فرانسا لوکیشنیان بۆ نار گوتی لە ئای بەریتانیا تەلەفۆنمان بۆ بەریتانیا کرد گوتی تەلەفۆن بۆ پلیسی فرانسا کرد.
Using marine tracking data, testimony from survivors and what authorities say happened, Sky News has learnt how the tragedy unfolded.
So what's important to know with this story is the actual official investigation still hasn't happened, and this is now a year old. So what happened? The dinghy left the French coast, and it wasn't found until the next day. We used a website, as I highlighted in that video, called Marine Traffic. Some of you may have heard of it. What it does is, large and medium boats, some small, they have what's called an AIS system, automatic ID system. It allows them to be tracked, and it allows them to be seen by other boats. Coordinates from the Mayday call, coordinates from the Mayday call were sent to us. Very, very luckily, a student was on board a fishing boat and was filming and doing an interview, and just while the interview was going on, the Mayday call came out, and so they recorded those coordinates and sent them directly to us. So these coordinates allowed us to build an investigation around. And that red dot is where it is. That is in French territorial waters, but less than a mile from British territorial waters. And so you kind of get a sense of where the story's going. So, next slide, please. Using marine traffic, we could see what boats were in the area when one of the survivors started calling for help. Between 2:15 and 2:45, we know that they started calling for help, both on the French and the British side. So this is the picture at 3 a.m. And note, we don't know exactly where they are at this point. We have a French warship, we have a border force boat Valiant, and that's the Saint-Jacques d'Eur, a French fishing boat, which eventually flags to essentially make the Mayday call happen. We also know at 3:45 a.m., a search and rescue helicopter was in the channel. I mean, I'm not saying here that there was any indication that they knew, but calls were being made to both sides. The image on the right is when the Mayday call went out, right in the middle of the circle there. That whole radius is 5 miles, or 4.3 nautical miles. And it was actually the French fishing boat, which was still in that area, that flagged it up. Most boats would have got that message. It was on an open channel, channel 5, I think is what the French fishermen told us, which means all of them would have got it. And it also, we were able to show that very few of them actually attended the incident and helped out with the rescue. So we ended up publishing a story that showed multiple failings by the French and the British. They kept passing the buck about who was responsible for the rescue. It was clear that these failures led to more deaths. The full 6-7 minute video is on our website and online if you want to see more of it. So we've shown you some of our work, the tools and methods that we use, and now probably is possibly the most fun part. We've got a challenge for you. The challenge is only on your mobile, and bear in mind we'll take some questions as well, so you might want to go away and do this at home. So here's a photo. I took this photo, so that might give you a sense of where it is, although maybe I'm really well travelled. There's 3 parts to it. Where exactly is this photo taken? Part 2 is how far would the two girls in the photo need to travel to drop off their bikes if they were finished for the day? And number 3, what motorbike is the person in the center of the picture riding? I've just tweeted it on my Twitter. It's there if you want to have a zoom in and look around the image. Feel free to reply this evening, tomorrow, whenever you get a chance. Otherwise, we'll take any questions, if anybody has any. Go ahead. Oh, one second, microphone. Wait, sorry.
So with the rise of content creators now, are we all journalists on the road now?
It's an interesting question. I think journalism can mean different things to different people to some extent, and it's what you're expecting from a journalist. So you have different people that you trust in different elements. If you're coming to Sky News, you're assuming that we are going to be, and we are, Ofcom regulated. There is a certain amount of, therefore we don't have an agenda, as much as the trolls like to say otherwise. And there's a certain variety of editorial guidelines will follow. To me, anyone that records life as it happens is a journalist, but it's to what expectations you have of that person is how you should kind of read them. That's my opinion.
I actually got this slightly wrong. I predicted a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, that we would be seeing every breaking news event we go to live streamed on our phones, because that technology was being used all over Facebook and over social media. But it hasn't quite happened that way, and I thought we would have an issue where we would there would be a breaking news story, we couldn't get a camera there, and maybe we were an hour and a half away, and somebody on Facebook was live streaming it and what we were going to do. We've never actually come across that. Exactly, and TikTok, all of it. So yeah, we could, and I was thinking that might be more common, but actually it isn't as common as I thought.
But things are rapidly changing. It's hard to see, and what's really interesting as we're having this talk now, the Iranian protests that are going on, that's somewhere that our kind of more Western media is not really able to get into. Journalists on the ground are being prevented from reporting. So all we have, do you want to call them citizen journalists? Do you want to call them content creators? You've got people who are risking their life and limb to get these short clips out for the rest of the world to know. And who am I to say that's not journalism?
Thank you, guys. That was really interesting. I'm just wondering, how do you guys work with big tech? So, for example, if somebody posts an image on Twitter, does Twitter share the coordinates with you? If somebody's taken a phone on their iPhone, can Apple share data with you in terms of where that photo was taken? Do you get the coordinates from that, etc.?
It's an interesting question. I don't know if you want to take that first.
In short, no. We've actually found the social networks have been changing some of the ways that they share content that's made our lives more difficult, actually. I mean, I again, another prediction 5 years ago, but I thought that every single tweet would be geolocatable, that everybody, and it is, but actually the social networks have made our jobs more difficult. You can go on Instagram and we can say that we're in Dubai, but we're actually sitting here today. And so actually I was hoping the social networks would have helped us, but they kind of haven't, because you can be anywhere in the world and say you're somewhere else in the world. There are a small percentage of tweets that are geolocated. There are Snapchat, about a tiny percentage on a snap map, so we can actually see exactly where they are. But actually the social networks haven't helped us as much as they could have done.
There are companies cropping up that kind of bridge that gap. So, for example, Talkwalker is a company that Twitter uses to monitor its own platform. And when we were doing some reporting actually again on the Iranian protests, we used that platform to get a sense of the scale of hashtag Masa Amini. And so they're kind of not an arbiter, but I don't know, a friendly bridge.
Yeah, not to say we don't work with them, but just some of the changes they've done haven't helped us with open source.
Actually, the only thing I would add, is when we report, we always, if there is in any way something to put to a social media company, we always give them a right of reply, just because they should have their say in the story. And I can't think of a single example where we've brought them something that objectively is at least concerning and they haven't then acted on it.
before about your methodology in terms of how you've found or tracked down where the photo was taken. Do you publish that as well whenever you're, so you do, okay.
Increasingly we're publishing our workings actually, and we found that the interest for them is really high to show how you work something out. We haven't quite had like cameras sitting behind us while we're trying to do it, but no, I do think it's a transparency thing. We're trying to show our journalism and how it works, and any time that we do that, it does really, really well. And actually you, taking a 40-second video and making that 3 minutes and explaining it in absolute detail and showing what you spotted, and actually having that language as well that's a bit more how you'd explain it to people in the pub, like, oh yeah, and I spotted that and it was amazing, and if you zoom in, and that's the kind of work that we're trying to do.
What we do sometimes do in articles is almost a highlights of how we've geolocated something. So for example, you might have, during the Pakistan floods, I worked on a picture that you could see some kind of crumbled buildings, some blue roofs, and the curve of a lake or something, I can't quite remember. So we had that picture in the article next to the Google Maps image, and we just draw different coloured boxes, so both blue sections were in a green box, the curve of the lake was on the yellow box, so you can see for yourself and you can decide, do you trust that geolocation that we've done? Any other questions?
How's everyone getting on with this? We did this in our forensics team last week, and about 10 minutes was the average, maybe a bit longer.
Hi, I just think what you're doing is really great and really interesting, and I wondered, in terms of journalism education, is this, I mean, are people being trained, or is this sort of more of a bespoke specialization within the profession?
I mean, it's quite a cool area in that way, because you don't need training to look at Google Maps. And actually, even within our team, we have quite a variety. So I'm a bit more traditional in theory. I have an undergrad, then I did a journalism master's at City University. But actually, all the OSINT skills I taught myself off YouTube, and there are some fantastic tutorials out there. And I actually got into OSINT while reporting on that missing Dubai princess, because I was like, I don't know how to prove this otherwise. And it's an amazing way to just tool up anyway. But we have people who have completely unrelated undergrads and have never really been on a super formal, I mean, they've got legal training and that kind of thing. I don't know what your training is.
I think it is catching up slowly, really, really slowly. Investigations courses for journalism, but even when one of our colleagues, Jack, went to the investigations course and told them they were absolutely amazing, it was very different from what they actually do. So I think very, very slowly, but very, very similar to Sanya, most of my training was self-taught, and yeah, playing, I don't know if anyone's heard of GeoGuessr and trying to find where you are in the world, stuff like that definitely helps, and looking more and more at locations, you do get better. It's a bit like going to the gym. The more you go to the gym, the bigger your muscles get. The more you get used to looking at images and going, oh yeah, you know what, that and that is what I'm going to look at. And you might be completely wrong, but you might get it right.
Your eyes definitely do get trained at looking at images in a different way. It now really annoys my friends, because they'll be showing me a picture of a night out and I'll be like, oh wow, I can't believe the drinks were 50% off because there's a sign in the background, and that's just where I look automatically now. I think that's all we've got time for. We'll be hanging around for a few more minutes if you want to come ask us for tips on this or any other questions you didn't want to share with the audience. We'll be happy to help you, and thank you so much for coming to listen to us.
Thanks very much.